Laura, do you see my screen? Do folks see my, see a screen there with an
Yes.
agenda? Okay.
Thank you. Did you have anything else, Melinda?
No, that I just want to make sure that you could see what was going on. And all right.
All right, does anyone have any public comment this morning? Or any other business that's not on the agenda? If not, let's go on and look at the minutes of January 5th. Does anyone have any comment about the minutes? Melinda, I just wanted to thank you again. It really keeps in mind what we still have to do as a commission to have such great minutes. So thank you again.
You're welcome.
Do I hear a motion to approve the minutes?
I will make that motion.
I think Carl was also trying to make it, but is on mute. So Carl, do you want a second?
I'll second, sure.
Thank you. If there are no other comments, we have passed the minutes. Thank you again, Melinda.
You have to vote on them.
Yeah, we didn't vote.
Oh, I'm sorry. Boy, I'm not awake yet. Okay, all those in favor of the minutes signify by saying aye.
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 Anyone opposed or is anyone abstaining? Okay, thank you. The minutes have been approved.
I guess I'm abstaining since I wasn't there.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Gary. I see Walter has joined us. Welcome, Walter.
Thank you and good morning.
Okay.
Walt, it's so cool to see you. It's been such a long time. How are you?
Hi, Kim. Great. Yeah, I was so pleased to see you on this.
Okay, before we get to the Field Naturalist program, we do have to talk about the CSWD access drive and scale house pre-application. Let's see.
I just want to say I'm very early, so I'm not expecting to go right away. I see I'm on at
Okay.
7:45, so I just wanted to make sure I could connect.
All right. Is everyone here that should be here to talk about the access drive and scale house?
Yeah, my name's Janine McCrum. I'm a compliance specialist with the Chittenden Solid Waste District. And I think I'm the only one that's showing up this morning, so.
Thanks, Janine. And Melinda, are you going to be a co-host with Janine so she can show her screen?
I can show the site plan if that's what you want to see, or the staff report, either one. What would you like to do?
Look at the site plan first.
Okay. Hold on. All right. And Janine, feel free if you want to talk about the project, that would be great.
Sure. So I came before you guys in October. Essentially what we're looking to do is to provide a new main entrance, if you will, to the composting facility. The driver in that, there's a couple, but mainly we are looking to relocate our scale, which is sort of kind of in the middle of the pad, if you will. It kind of limits use of that area. And as we've, taken on more material, we're looking to improve our overall flow up on the site. Not to mention their scale also is rusting out. It's over 10 years old now. They won't update the software. There's a lot of things going on with that too. So as part of the thought that we were going to get a new scale, we started thinking about, the entrance in general. And we looked at this particular area. We looked at a couple variations. One, we thought about going behind that. It's a garage building. Essentially, that was an old, the houses there, or the yellow buildings, if you will. One is a ranch house, and then there was a large kind of maintenance garage associated with that. So we looked at different ways to work with that or go around it. And we ultimately settled on the location that we chose because it was the least amount of impact to the wetland and the stream. It also allowed us to reuse that one ranch home. We're going to actually make that our scale house. We're going to take away part of that larger garage building and then use that as well as a maintenance type building or a storage building for the compost facility. We are going to remove that lined pond that you see. Melinda, I don't know, do I have control of the mouse or can I do that?
Well, so do you want me to just, if you want, I can.
Oh, you can do it. You can do
Yeah.
it. That's fine. I just want to make sure that people, yeah. So currently it's a lined pond that collects water. Initially, it was designed to collect kind of stormwater from, we do have some underground piping that comes from some catch basins on site, but the reality is that the loamy sand soils, the Windsor soils that are up there are very they're very well drained, so we don't really get an excess of stormwater, so to speak. So generally what collects in that pond is what's come directly into it. And, unfortunately it's not there when we need it, right? When it's really hot and we could use the extra water for wetting of the compost, it's not in that pond. So we've decided instead that we would prefer to do away with that pond and we could refill it. We could use the extra land area. So we'll be doing that as part of this as well. We are designing some extra stormwater, or not extra stormwater, but we're relocating kind of our stormwater infrastructure that's associated with the impervious surfaces on there. And then we're doing, I think I gave you, do you have a plan called a model?
Let's see. Is it, no, it's not that. Hold on. That's all we have.
Okay. Well, there you go. That's what I was looking for.
Yeah.
This is actually, we did an exercise with a landscape architect or just a site designer to kind of help us in terms of flow once you get onto the site. So the thought that we have here is that once, commercial traffic mainly is going to come across the scale, residential traffic will bypass the scale. They can have access to there's going to be a food waste area down in kind of right below where the pond is now in that parking area. We're going to make a, food waste drop off only. And then as you continue on through the site to the right, you see where it says cars, small pickups, larger trail. That will be where our leaf and yard wood waste will be deposited. Larger commercial trucks with food scraps will take the outer, there you go, the outer ring, kind of come around, and then they will deposit right under the covered building as they do now. Because that material, needs to be covered and dealt with right away. So that's kind of the general layout or thought that we have right now. Do you guys have any questions or?
Well, I have one question, and that is, when we went over this in October, I was a little bit worried about what's going to happen to the people who live in that house, since the driveway is so close to the back of their house. Could you answer that? Have they sold it, or have you purchased that property?
We've actually owned that house for a bit now. When I first started, we were renting it out, but it hasn't been rented in a couple years. So CSWD owns that home.
Oh, okay, good.
I have a question. I was looking at the staff report, and I'm now thinking back to when you visited before. And I think one of our concerns was the wetland buffer in relation to where the road comes off of Redmond Road. And I think we suggested, if you can, to shift that, which I think is north, just a ways to keep that entrance out of the wetland buffer. So I'm just curious what your conclusion was on that. Did you shift it north?
Right. So thank you for revisiting that, Gary. Yeah, we actually did kind of look at that. But what one of the other things that we're interested in is keeping as much queuing area off site as we can. And I know it would be a minimal shift and it would be some loss. Well, I say it would be a minimal shift, but by shifting it, you're essentially moving the whole road, curve, etc. And so we felt like we were impacting ourselves by losing more queuing area than we were comfortable doing. And by lessening the impact on that corner, we may actually have been causing more impact of the wetland that we're crossing with the brook. So, and if you look at the site too, there's where, it's hard for me to say, but where those big trees are, right off of the road, there, to the, yeah, that side, that's a pretty big bank. There's a fair amount of a bank there. So I think we felt like it would be more disturbance than it might be worth to. I'm not saying I'm not interested in protecting that buffer, but I think we kind of weighed some of the different alternatives out and felt like we'd rather stay centered on the road than shift it further to the north.
I thought I saw two side-by-side diagrams where one did have the road shifted to the north in the staff report.
I was about to say the same thing, Laura.
Do you remember where that was?
If
I
you look
think
at
it was
this
on
diagram,
page 3.
yeah, if
I guess
if you
I
go
was
ba-
on, go ahead.
yeah, this diagram, nope, not that one, sorry. We were just there.
I think it's page 5. Is that what you're talking about?
Okay, right here. Okay, you can see that the buffer is now below the road. The
I'm not
buffer is the,
I'm not sure, is that the buffer or is that the edge of the wetland?
no, that, it has the
Yeah.
same contour line as the diagram above that,
That's,
that black line.
yeah, that's the buffer. To me, it looks like the road had been shifted ever so slightly north. I could be wrong, but that's what it appeared like to me, but maybe not.
Melinda,
But
are
that-
you on the site plan or are you on the narrative?
I'm in the staff report right now. Can you all see that?
If you go to site plan, there's an actual, on page 3, there's a side by side. And
Oh,
it says, one says existing condition plans, and then on the
Oh,
left
okay.
and the right side says proposed.
yeah, okay,
There you go.
yeah.
Mm. Yeah, you can see they're not at the same scale, these two diagrams, I'm pretty sure. But you can see the pink contour line on the left is the same as the black contour line, I think, on the right there, that is the buffer. Below that.
Yeah, this is the
below your
wetland
arrow,
itself.
yeah.
This is the wetland and this
Oh,
is
I
the
see.
buffer. Yeah,
Oh,
it
I
does-
see.
but it does look like to me, this is the edge of the road. And the edge of the road itself is out of the buffer. There still is some grading and some disturbance in the buffer. Whereas here, the old road appears to be more in the buffer to me. That's what it looks like.
Yeah, it's exactly what I saw, Melinda, was that the road itself was no longer in the buffer, but the grading down from the road off the side of the road would impact a little bit.
Yeah,
And I'm favorable to the new proposed location depicted on the right there.
Yeah, I agree with Reed. I think that as they proposed it, the impacts are nominal. I took a few looks as I was driving back and forth over the past few months. And I think if they moved it farther north, there would be other impacts that would be more of a concern. And I think with the if I recall, the solid waste district is proposing some mitigation of other wetlands on site, which I think makes up, if my memory is correct, would make up for what I think is a nominal disturbance here at this curb cut.
I would agree with that too. It's quite a bit of mitigation.
Can we go over that mitigation or at least show me where it is? I can't remember exactly where that was gonna happen.
so what I'm showing now is that the area of the proposed buffer restoration, I think is, and the proposed wetland restoration. So I believe, and Janine, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it's this entire area down here. And it
That's correct.
about in total Yeah, so the buffer restoration area is 17,000 square feet and the wetland restoration is 14,000 square feet. Is that correct?
Yeah, I was
Yeah,
very
that's-
pleased to see the location and the size of the restoration area. Janine, I think that's a really valuable correction to make to land use as part of this. Thank you.
Sure.
And Janine, any more thoughts on when you're restoring it? Are you letting it grow or are you doing any plantings? As far as I remember seeing, it's an agricultural field right now. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's well, partially. I mean, it's being partially mowed, but we're gonna let it return. And I think that Melinda has some questions about the actual demarcation and how we would accomplish that. When we had it delineated and I was talking with the wetland consultant, I did get a list of kind of species that would work there if we wanted to kind of put, a hedgerow of trees or something to make it clear. And as well as kind of recommended spacing from him. He said we could also use, fence posts or something. I don't know. We'll probably use some sort of combination like that, particularly along that, the immediate entrance there, and then that existing access road that goes up. As you can see, that little, I call it, almost looks like the Little Dipper, where the red is not. So yeah, if you go up there, but to the east of that truck, Melinda, that's in the field. That little space that's not, I'm sorry, there you go. Yeah. That little area right there, essentially he didn't put that in there because that's already amply vegetated. In other words, it hasn't been disturbed. It's a good wooded area. So it's kind of a good, there are some areas back there with vegetation that, have been naturally vegetated that give us an idea of what the species are and what we should try to do in that area.
So would you be also discontinuing mowing that every year?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, we would.
And would you mow it like every 2 to 3 years, or would you just let it go back?
I don't think we'd mow it at all.
Okay.
I have a suggestion, and that is if you are going to demarcate that wetland buffer, I think it should include that Little Dipper space, because that is the required 50-foot buffer. So I suggest that line that has dots in it be continued around there, or whatever, that we include that in the demarcation. And you might as well call it a buffer restoration area. I mean, it may be partially restored already, but I would include
Melinda, is this sort of outside our purview, since that was approved through the state wetlands permitting, or is it appropriate to talk about changing the restoration area at all on the map?
Well, I mean, I don't know, you can certainly make recommendations. They can certainly change. I mean, they could probably change it on the plan, but obviously they're not doing anything to that area because it's already forested. I mean, I don't know, in my mind, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to include that as restoration area if they're not going to do anything to it. You can demarcate this as a wetland buffer in some way if you
Yeah, I guess I was more concerned about that. That's a good idea.
Mhm.
I just don't want them to come back and say, oh, that's not demarcated. We can go in there and improve something in there. Yeah.
Right.
Well, it is demarcated out to the dashed line. So
Yeah, I guess, yeah. I was looking at that other line, which I guess what is that one?
But yeah,
That says proposed demarcation.
Kind of
The
on
other
the
line-
ground, demarcation of that buffer. Right. In that area that circles around. We could figure
You see-
something out that's,
you see-
I don't want to make it look totally unnatural, but we could figure a way out to, make that clear that that's the edge of the wetland buffer.
maybe even in an area like that where they're not going to be doing any clearing, maybe just like, some signage in a couple of places, just to say this is, edge of wetland buffer, something like that. Whereas along the edge out here, it might make sense to do a row of trees or some type of fencing or something like that.
Is that okay with you, Janine?
Yeah, that's fine. Yep.
Okay, great. I think it's probably time to look at the recommendations in the staff report, if people are okay with doing that. And Janine, have you submitted, or are you going to submit the erosion prevention sediment control plan? I seem to remember you talked about it.
We will submit that. We have done our stormwater design, but in terms of like the true, excuse me, I think we qualified for a low impact from a state perspective. We do have a construction permit. We will put together an erosion prevention and sediment control plan that's clear for our contractor when they're working in terms of phasing and sediment fences and things like that. I strongly believe we need to do that on this site, even though, low impact via the state, but that's fine. We don't have a problem doing that.
All right, any questions about that? Okay, and the second recommendation, the applicant's wetland mitigation plan should provide greater detail with respect to the location and species of proposed plantings.
So if you're planning on having a row of trees, just show them on site plan, indicate what species they are.
Sure. And that's not a problem. As I mentioned, I had actually reached out to the consultant, early on, we were doing this about what he would recommend for species and, things like that. So I do have that information. I can do that for you.
Okay, thank you, Janine.
Sure.
Any other questions about number 2? Okay, third recommendation is watershed protection buffers should be clearly demarcated on the site plan submitted for discretionary permit and demarcated on the ground by plantings of fence or a line of boulders to prevent future disturbance. And we actually just talked about this. And do we want to include in there that in the forested area that there should be signage, just so that doesn't get lost, because it could be forgotten otherwise.
I also think, I don't know why isn't the demarcation going around the entire wetland buffer and joining that other demarcation area? I mean, that's what we typically do. You would put it around the whole place, around the whole buffer. I mean, even if it's just signs through there, I'd like to see something all the way around the entire buffer. Unless there's a reason not to.
I'm open to that. I'm trying to remember. I feel like it's kind of hard to see on this, but there's a physical kind of aspect to the property, if you will, if I remember correctly, like that clump of trees that's not included up in that area. I feel like the ground goes up in that area. And so when we were looking at it, it just made sense to kind of do it this way. I don't have a problem, however, putting up, a sign here and there or something to denote the edge of that buffer up on that area. I just feel like, and I apologize because it's been a while, but I feel like walking the property, it was clear, you could clearly see the differentiation in topography in that other area. So I think that's why we chose not to necessarily have it there, but that's fine. maybe it won't be as pronounced as the other ones, but we will have something there. Is that fair?
Yeah.
It seems fair to me to have something as a buffer delineation on the ground.
Yeah, can we go back to the recommendation and see how the wording is again?
It seems like that recommendation does include that.
Yeah.
Demarcated on the ground by plantings, fence line. I mean, you could add signage if you felt that was necessary.
It might be okay to just add that just because when you're going through, it's just a good memory jogger.
Yeah, I can do that.
Okay. Okay, anything else from the commission? Do we have a motion for approval of the pre-application?
I'll move to approve.
Okay.
I'll second.
Okay, thank you, Terry. All those in favor of approval of the recommendations as amended in the pre-application for CSWD signify by saying aye.
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 Is there anyone opposed? Does anyone abstain? All right, great. The recommendations of the pre-application have been approved. Thank you so much, Janine, for all your explanation and for the work you're doing, making sure you have the right plantings, etc. Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Thanks, Janine.
Hey, Melinda, I have a question about this wetlands delineation. It's not specific to this project, but this conversation reminded me of it. Do we keep track of the wetlands that are the demarcation of wetlands for these site proposals, for these projects in town? And I asked, and if we do, is that information able to be uploaded to the state's wetlands GIS layers?
We have not typically kept track of that. I believe the state is supposed to be updating their class 2 wetlands layer according to all the wetland delineations that are done. But and I see that they do that, from time to time. They do updates. We don't incorporate that information into GIS just because it's too time consuming. Yeah, so.
Okay. I was just thinking about the new climate action plan and the highlight and emphasis on restoring lands, the wetlands. I want to talk with some of my state people about that.
Yeah, I mean, generally, like we keep track of them to the extent that we have all these site plans and we've reviewed them. So we know, where there are wetlands delineated. And if there is a site of interest, it's easy enough to kind of bring that up and bring up the wetlands delineation. We just haven't incorporated that into a town-wide layer. So these delineations are typically done when development is proposed. And, once that development goes through, there are conditions that are associated with that site. And we know, we have the wetlands delineated for that particular site. Does that make sense?
It does. I'm just trying to think of it, at the state level, if this local level, how useful this local level on the ground information would be, rather than, so the state is generally using it satellite imagery or whatever to.
Yeah, and like I said, I think they do use these delineations to update their own class 2 wetlands layer. Because I've looked at a recent update and it seems consistent with that as sites are delineated, they incorporate them into their statewide layer, but I just don't know how often that's done.
Sure. Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
All right. Why don't we move on and hear from Walter? Thank you, Walter.
Yes, good morning, everybody. Great to be here with you virtually. I recognize a lot of faces and names, so I'm really pleased to be joining you this morning. And as I think, well, big thanks to Gary and others for inviting me to join this morning. Basically, I don't know, is it possible, Linda, for me to share my screen?
You should be able to do that now. I made you co-host, so.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Sure.
So what I'd love to do is share my screen and show you a few slides about a class I'm teaching this semester, Landscape Inventory and Assessment. And this class, we've worked with Williston in the past, and we have a new project that we'd love to engage the Conservation Commission in. So I'm going to share for a few minutes about that. Feel free to interrupt at any time. And then I have a request. There are a couple of requests of you all to consider at the meeting today. So let me move into sharing now. Looks like I've got it. Just let me know if it's if you can see a slide that says Landscape Inventory and Assessment.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, awesome. All right, this class really reflects my role as director of the Field Naturalist Program. And this is a new role for me, although I've been a faculty member working with Gary and others in the Rubenstein School for the last 20 years. I came to University of Vermont actually back in 1993 to join the Field Naturalist Program as a student. And one of my first projects, actually, Carl, seeing you on the screen there, I don't know if you remember me, from 29 years ago, I actually did a project at Lake Iroquois Natural Area for a predecessor of this class. So in some ways, I've come full circle now and had a great experience working with the Conservation Commission. It was kind of a chance to try on the role of being an environmental consultant. And that's really what this class is all about. I'm now the instructor of it. And as you can see in the description here, it's a field-based service learning course for graduate students in UVM's Field Naturalist Program. So I'm the primary instructor and the director of the program, and I'm just particularly excited about partnering in Williston again. The course is PBio 395 because we're in the plant biology department, and the course takes place Monday afternoons, generally between noon and 4. Our students would be out in Williston on the land. Here's a quick description of the course. It's really again, the chance for the group of students. They're all in their second semester at UVM in a 2-year program, and they're really training to be, field ecologists and practice their natural history skills on interpreting landscapes. And so this is a chance for them to be in a consulting role and really assess different landscapes from a variety of perspectives. So many of them go on to work with, at the state level for the Nature Conservancy, land trusts. And so this is really good training. And so the idea of taking on a parcel of land and really exploring it from an integrated field science perspective on behalf of the community partners and making recommendations. So as you can see here, the students really assess a whole range of values from ecological to human history to economic potential, everything that's kind of the landscape potential of a particular place. This particular class will have 8 graduate students, 5 of whom are first-year field naturalists, and the others are involved in the integrated degree program we have with Vermont Law School, and also just in forestry and natural resources as well. We work with a range of natural resource professionals. It's a chance for many of whom are alumni of our program, but just as an example, we would be working with Ethan Tapper. He often helps out with his classes, Chittenden County Forester. Jane Dorney, who's a cultural geographer, was always a part of this class, and just a range of folks, from the professional community. And the primary students in this are the field naturalists. And I just want to, if you're not familiar with the program, it's in its 38th year now, and we really are really lucky to attract some really talented students who are interested in sort of going on to be conservation professionals. Many are currently employed, in the Nature Conservancy or, various land trust positions, many for the state. Some go on to get their PhDs and are in higher education doing research. But the whole idea is integrated field science and communication, the combination of those two. And I'm really pleased to say we just have a tremendous group in our 38th year of the program. These are the 5 current students. This was last semester at Shelburne Farms they kind of cut their teeth on interpreting the geology and pollination ecology of the farmscape at Shelburne Farms. So it was really cool, and set the stage for the project that we're taking on this semester. And I will say that these students are all currently being matched with master's projects around the country, in which that serves as their master's project. They do a whole field season of research on behalf of a sponsor. And so this class kind of builds up to that. It's a chance to work with sponsoring groups and really figure out how to meet the needs of a landowner or community, and really sort of the biodiversity aspirations of a particular place. So here's the landscape we're particularly interested in. And again, it comes full circle for me because I got to know the Lake Iroquois natural area really well. I mapped vernal pools there 30 years ago, and looked at it from a variety of perspectives. But this parcel is currently owned by Laura Handy. It's the area right in the middle there, just north of Lake Iroquois, right along South Road. From a landscape level perspective, it's pretty cool because it's right on the edge of this larger forested, area in Williston that connects down into Heinsberg, et cetera. So this is the landscape in question that we're hoping to have as the focal parcel. Although I want to say right from the beginning that we really love to look at whole town landscapes. So in partnering with Williston, there's a chance to connect with you all and think about the overall Williston landscape and its changes through time, and all the pressures that you're talking about in your talk this morning around, how do you deal with, all sorts of things, from composting to development to wildlife habitat to connectivity, recreation opportunities. So we're really interested in partnering with Williston in this respect. Though our focal parcel, we always have one. In this case, it's going to be what was called Laura's farm. And Laura Handy, who some of you may know, I'm not sure when she bought the land, but she is a business person in the community. She owns farmscapes in Colchester as well. The Handys are a well-known business family in the Burlington area, and she's just a really nice, cool person, and I really enjoyed getting to know her. And I'll show you in a minute how we met through a connection with UVM's extension. But here's the parcel's 105 acres, and this is information I got from Ethan Tapper, but it's currently 60 acres of forest, pretty much 29 acres of agricultural land, not actively used right now, but it has great agricultural potential. One of the key things is that there's a restored barn there that was a 1790s barn originally. They basically, with Elliot Lathrop and his organization, were able to, he's with Building Heritage, we're able to restore the barn using as many of the original materials as possible. And Laura's I think it's a really cool vision. She really wants to make a community-based place that currently has some incubator farms. It wants a trail system. I think I spelled agro-tourism wrong there, but I know that's a big part of South Williston. You know, this idea of agro-tourism and connecting people to the land through all sorts of activities. Of course, the idea of enhancing the overall biodiversity, not only of the parcel, but of its connectivity within the Williston landscape is key. Human history on the land. This is just a really cool stone wall landscape with this reconstructed barn. Probably rich indigenous history as well that we'll be looking into, and just a really great spot for place-based education. As some of you may know, I'm very interested in place-based learning, and had an opportunity to work with Williston a few years ago on what was the Wing project, and was really looking at the past, present, and future of Williston. And it was just a great opportunity for many of our students to get involved in inventorying parcels as well as community education. Let's see, let me give you the next slide here. Here is another, this is a map I just got from Ethan recently, which is part of the use value appraisal set of maps. Anyway, we're starting with some basic maps. But a big part of the class is to be mapping the parcel from a variety of perspectives, you know, from the substrate to the hydrology to wildlife habitat to natural communities to forestry potential, and kind of you name it, and mapping it in such a way that it will be really useful to Laura and her aspirations and the community of Williston, as well as a site for engagement. Here's the, it's really striking. And if you've driven along South Road, you know, this was new to me, the old barn that was reconstructed, I think it was back in 2013. So it's almost 10 years ago, I believe now. And it's, if you haven't been in there, it's a fabulous space, and it's really kind of waiting for opportunities for the, you know, the community to engage with it, I would say. And I think Laura is really genuine about this. This aspiration. She loves the idea of school groups being there, community events, field walks, all sorts of possibilities. So that's part of what we're planning to explore on her behalf. It's a little bit unusual for us to work with a private landowner, but a lot of this came about because of the efforts of my colleague, Hans Estrin. He's kneeling in the front row next to Laura there with the hat on and the rubber boots. And this was a meeting that happened back in October. And there's a group of people there, including the new dean in the sort of the mustard colored outfit there. And this is Leslie Parisi, the new dean of CALS. Next to her, with the purse on her shoulder, is Jean Harris, the new chair of plant biology. And next to her is the new director of extension. I've lost his name right now, but anyway, there's a whole group of people there, including me and Hans, who are really interested in this sort of evolving role of extension, of working with communities on resiliency, and particularly working with farmscapes that might contribute, in addition to local food production, but values for the community. So this is when I got introduced, loved the place, loved it as a possible landscape for this class, because it's, you know, it's about the right size. Students can really learn a lot by analyzing it from different perspectives. We had a great tour with Laura, and it just kind of got the wheels turning. And so the idea is that in this project, what we're kind of aiming for, and this is my last slide, and this is sort of the ask of you all to consider, is as these group of 8 students are exploring and learning through connection with the Williston landscape, and particularly having a focal parcel of Laura's farm, might the Williston Conservation serve as one of 3 sponsors of this project? Of course, Laura would be one as the landowner. UVM Extension, primarily through Hans, but through CALS, is really interested in, you know, connecting with this parcel, deepening its connection with Williston, and looking for new ways to really have Extension's role being working more closely with community around resiliency, especially in climate changing world. So that's one thing. And what would that mean? Through Melinda and others, and you all on the commission, how might the students sort of gain access to information about the natural and cultural resources of the Williston landscape and really learn about it as a case study? So that's part of it. And here's a big part of it is that, this is a service learning class, and I know you've hosted many, and I know you're hosting NR 206 at the Rubenstein School coming up, but there's an opportunity for our students to help meet your needs. And Gary and I have talked a little bit about this. Really, what questions might our students grapple with this semester? And this is a really talented group who has strong GIS skills, strong natural history skills, and really just could really deliver some quality things to you all, sort of above and beyond looking at this parcel. What I'm asking is for a representative, and there can be more than one of you, to join the class during our first day really in the field. And this would be about a week and a half from now on Monday, January 21. We would meet at Laura's farm in that barn, and we sort of hear from the sponsors about what their goals are, and we take a tour of the landscape. And then at the end of the semester, really being part of a final presentation and field walk that the students would do for the sponsors and interested members of the community, perhaps, at that stage. So that is my presentation here. I'm going to stop sharing, and I can do this here and come back to you all to field any questions or ideas or concerns. Thank you.
Thank you, Walter.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions or comments for Walter?
Walter, I have one quick one. Do you know, is Laura willing to support trail systems through there that might connect like down to Lake Iroquois? And as a result of that, she'd see foot traffic going through her land.
Yeah.
Is she comfortable with that?
Yeah, that's a great question, Gary. I think that's part of the reason for the class. She's interested in the potential and the possibilities of how to engage with the community, but I don't think she really, knows, what that would, ultimately look like and what the impact would be. But I'd say she's open to it, and that would be part of the exploration. When I asked her directly, would she be interested in, for instance, hosting, field trips out there, for students from Williston schools, she said, definitely, that's the kind of thing I'm interested in. So, and natural history workshops, for instance, that might be staged out of the barn and exploring the land. She's yes to that. And that's what really kind of drew me to it. The actual, existing, connecting to existing trails, I'd say that's a strong maybe. But I can't really kind of speak for her in that way.
I think another piece of that we often struggle with is parking, or some way of people, getting to that area for a hike, but that could be part of what students look into as possibilities as well.
Yeah, I think absolutely. I think the opportunity here is for our students to really kind of listen to what the aspirations of both the community and the landowner and Extension in this case, what are the aspirations, and how might these things all fit together in a mutually supportive way, and then present about that to everybody at the end. So that's their design challenge, is to really work with that. So these are exactly the kind of questions that we want to be grappling with as a part of the class.
I just wanted to mention that the work that I'm engaging in with the NR 206 class is kind of well integrated with this in a way. And so the students that I'm working with are going to be exploring the question of how much support is there in the town for expanding the current allowed uses in the agricultural rural residential district of town, which includes this parcel, And that the reason that that sort of came up is that, you know, we have all of these rural landowners and many with, you know, many that could, with land that could support agricultural uses or that is currently has agricultural uses, and landowners want to keep their land open. And, you know, they're faced with development pressures, and but a lot of them want to keep their land open and in a way that's economically sustainable to them. And so a lot of them, some landowners are exploring ideas, just as Laura is, with expanding the uses of their property, you know, to offer things just like this, community education, a community resource. We have some landowners who, you know, who want to do outdoor education, or who want to do like outdoor theater, or, you know, just different things. Some want to have, you know, want to host camping on their property. And, but there's a tension between this and what the uses are that are currently allowed. And they're really very limited. There is this provision that was recently adopted in the bylaw a few years ago that says, if you want to restore your historic barn, and then use it as a wedding barn, there, you know, that's considered an allowed use, but there's very strict limitations on what qualifies as historic restoration. And Laura, I believe, explored the idea of a wedding barn, but it ended up that her barn didn't strictly qualify as a restored historic structure, because a lot of the materials were not considered, I don't know what, original.
I think it fell down and they couldn't recover all the pieces.
Exactly. So there's that. And then
I was going to ask about that, because didn't she come into conservation? I remember her coming in with the plan to make it a wedding barn. I don't remember how long ago that was.
Yeah.
And also the idea to have potentially an orchard.
Right. Correct. Yeah.
So that didn't work for her.
Right.
Okay.
So what I would like the students of NR 206 to explore is to basically develop a survey to distribute, and just sort of ask people the question, like, would you support expanding uses? I mean, because, you know, because the other thing is, I think a lot of people would support them, but there's also a tension between, you know, there's some landowners, some people that live in rural areas who don't want to, like, for example, have a big loud event every week next door to them. So there is that tension. And so we're kind of exploring these issues and how to support being able to keep these lands open as working lands, you know, and what the community, how does the community at large feel about these issues, and is there support for that? And kind of along with that, where was I going with this? Anyway, I think there may be an opportunity for this class to maybe, I don't know, in some way integrate their work with the or follow up on the work of the NR 206 class. I'm not sure, but you know, and along with that, the question of trails, there's also a tension between potential agricultural uses and having your property be open to people who want to use a trail on the property. And we've seen that tension come up in very tangible ways over the last couple of years. For example, on the Isham farm, where they have found that trail use is not always compatible with the uses that they want to have on their farm. So there's a lot of interesting questions that come up around this. And I think, you know, it's really, it's very interesting.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. I mean, that's exactly, well, some of this is new to me, so it's really good to hear. I wasn't aware of the NR 206 class, but I will say that I worked closely with those students. Many are because I'm in both programs. It's probably, is it Laura Edling, maybe the one who is running
Yes.
it this year? And so
Yeah.
absolutely, some of our students serve as TAs for that particular class. So there's a real opportunity for some synergy around that. And I'm so glad you raised these, the questions, of land use, essentially, and what are the tensions, between, agritourism, for instance, and biodiversity, and,
Mhm.
privacy and public access. These are all, I think, absolutely the questions we want our students to be grappling with, because that's what they're trained to look at as well. So.
And
Yes.
I'll just throw one thing out there. And hi, Walt, good to see you again as well.
Yeah, Claire.
Something else that's come up in our world over the past few months is how development can impact wildlife, and how we should, as a conservation commission, should think about clustering development particularly across these rural parcels to minimize impacts to wildlife. So we had a project come up a couple of months ago that was proposing a new development is at the Trinity Baptist Church here in town, and they're on kind of the edge of what could be a large tract of undeveloped land, and it just kind of brought up the question of how should we think about clustering these development of these parcels that are on the edge of tracts of land. And they wanted to build their development like kind of into that undeveloped tract, but on the other side of the parcel, on the abutting parcel, there was already a bunch of housing. So we're talking about whether or not it would be better to have them cluster the housing against the other parcel that already had housing. And I thought I remembered a study that someone at Rubenstein School did years ago. I can't remember if it was Kensel or who, but that actually looked at the benefits of clustering houses in agricultural lands to maximize wildlife habitat benefits. So I don't know if perhaps this is something that your class could also look into and provide some guidance to us about how we might go about doing that if you're in town, particularly for these rural parcels like the one that you're looking at with Florida.
Absolutely. I think this question of sort of, ecological integrity, biodiversity, both as it plays out to, sort of what are the opportunities on the parcel, for instance, for native plantings that might enhance the overall ecology of the parcel, but what's the context of this particular parcel, in the wildlife corridors connecting, for instance, Lake Iroquois and Mud Pond, in that whole forested section. So these are, if you guys have landscape level sort of wonderings and questions or ongoing things that you're grappling with, that's not only about sort of human connectivity through the trail systems, but particularly about wildlife connectivity, this is just a great time of the years for the students to be investigating this through obviously tracking, wildlife cameras, a whole range of things that people like Jed Murdoch will be helping train them in as a part of this. Looking at landscape connectivity in a place like Williston is just a primo question that, for instance, if the Conservation Commission wanted to frame that in a certain way, we have 8 students who could really, some of them would really want to dig into this for you and gather data as well as answer questions, that sort of thing.
So
Interesting to me that this property is right around the corner from the Isham property that Melinda mentioned, which has a somewhat similar mission. There may be opportunities there for some cross-fertilization between the two entities.
I think that's exactly right, Carl. I'm not that familiar with the Isham farm, but I do know that they have sort of a robust transitioning into more of this agritourism sort of type of thing, very popular, very successful. And of course, what comes up immediately is, is would there be competition between these sorts of things, for instance. And I think this is part of Laura's very kind of aware of, she just already kind of just, put this out there. I think what I think what you're getting at, Carl, is there an opportunity for synergy, the different niches that actually might reinforce an overall ethos of what's happening in that part of Williston, and that's aligned with the community's goals, so a lot of moving parts. Not everybody will agree about everything, but I think there's an opportunity for planning. And I think the students in their role could really be sort of an outside group looking at this on behalf of the whole. So I would just put it out that way as well. I think the biodiversity piece is really critical. I mean, this is what students are trained in, is understanding, connectivity, natural community potential, restoration, plantings, thinking about farmscapes and biodiversity and how they fit together. We're doing a lot with pollination ecology and really looking at people like Doug Talamay's work, which is really about, enhancing biodiversity in suburban and farming landscapes. How do we do that, in the midst of this biodiversity crisis, while we're working to protect water quality and have local food production? These are kind of the big questions. How do we really do this in local communities and make more resilient communities that way, that are supporting humans in the more than human world?
So I live right around the corner from this particular piece of land. And I've been going by that place over 20 years, and I've always been very curious about what's been going on there. And I know that the land to the east of it, there's a lot of unofficial trails there, off of Caboose Lane, Beartown Lane, and then that goes over further to the Bass Trail, or what used to be the Bass Trail, which goes to Lake Iroquois. So there's a real interconnectivity that could be going on with those trails. So that's pretty exciting. And, I always wondered, it seems very private. That's the thing, when you drive by, there's a home, there's a house there that folks live in, and they park their cars on the side. So it seems, like it's very private. So I've never ventured down there, but have seen moose and coyote and owls and all sorts of wildlife there. And so I think this would be a great opportunity. I mean, the barn is beautiful. And I guess what happened is, just from what I remember, was that it fell down. I watched it, kind of fall apart, and then a couple of boards fell off, and then the windstorm came through and took it down, and they moved it. And it's a beautiful barn, and I imagine it's got a lot of potential for great uses, educational and things like that. So looking forward to something actually happening.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Thanks for that, Sarah. I think this, and again, I'm pretty new to this, the neighborhood. I know it in some ways, but I don't know everybody around there at all. But I think it is this opportunity where she's very interested in opening it up to the community. I think genuinely, and that is a rental right there. I think one of the questions is, what's she going to do with that in the future? And so there's a lot of potential. So I really see bringing Laura together with the community, through this, visioning process that's rooted in sort of ecology, is going to be an opportunity. And that's what I see as the potential for that. And having you all part of this conversation, I think, is a rich opportunity. Gary, yeah.
Well, I just wanted to say that I'm fully in support of this. I think there's opportunities for not only the three partners, but also to provide good education for students for the future. So, and I would be willing to be at least one of the people that, joined you in January and May, and to help in any way I can to with the Conservation Commission issues. I think there's great potential.
Thanks, Gary. I really appreciate that, and all of you for considering this. And yeah. Anyway, that's a key thing, is having somebody represent the group, or being there to help provide resources, but also ask the questions that the students, or help frame the questions that the students can grapple with. So I'd love for the Conservation Commission to really get something out of this in a reciprocal way.
I've just been listening, but just wanted to say I'm in support too. Hi, Walter. I'm Reed.
Hi, Reed. Thank you.
And I'm glad, Gary, that you might be available, because my only concern is that I wouldn't be available on the 31st, but I think having a representative from the Conservation Commission would be excellent.
I echo all of that. I wish I was available on the 31st, but it's the first day of the SUNY Plattsburgh semester. Sorry.
So I definitely am support. I live around the corner. I could also step in and join in with the class. And my name is
Yeah.
Terry, actually, not Sarah.
Oh, Terry.
I'm borrowing a.
Okay,
iPad.
Terry. You know what I
Yeah.
wanted to say is we did this, our project last semester was with the town of Huntington for the new Huntington Community Forest. And it was a great community exercise. Again, this was on newly acquired public land that was, and many of the community members, well, we had a public field walk at the end as a part of it, but if there's interest in joining in on some of the field trips, this would be, Jane Dorney doing cultural geography, Matt Colin doing wildlife tracking, Ethan Tapper looking at it from a forester's perspective, Hans Estrin looking at it from the agricultural potential of the landscape. This is something that we would encourage and welcome. For instance, Terry, you joining in on, some of those Monday afternoon field trips. That's what it's about, is how do we engage, in the field and keep the conversations going and alive.
I see that you, when you showed the map of the land, I was unaware. I knew there was a field right there on South Road that used to be hayed, but I didn't realize there were more fields in the back. And it looks like, and I wonder if, if there's bobolinks at the Isham farm and near the Bruce farm. So I wonder if there's any potential for grassland birds there.
Yeah, there may very well be, and really this idea of farmscape ecology is really a theme. As we grow food, how do we think about wildlife or grassland birds, pollinators, everything that can enhance and hopefully be synergistic with growing food and enhancing biodiversity. So those are all the bread and butter of the kind of questions that we're trying to ask and make recommendations about.
Thank you, Walter. This is very exciting to me as well. So thank you. I'm Laura Meyer, I chair. I work a lot with Alicia Daniel on the Vermont Master Naturalist Coordination. And
Yeah.
Terry is one of the Vermont Master Naturalists, actually. So
Wonderful. Alicia will be part of this too. I can tell you. She's one of our instructors with the program.
That's great. All right. Does anybody have anything else? Where 8:15 was our time to end this with Walter, but I think it looks like everyone's very supportive and excited. And thank you, Gary, for being our representative, and for others who might join in as well.
I was just wondering if we ought to just briefly talk about next steps and what, Walter, what would work best for your class in terms of the next step for the WCC to engage as a community partner.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think really key is how might might there be a bulleted list of things that the class might do in service to the Conservation Commission? And an example is this synergy between the NR 206 class and that class. Another one is, are there other parcels? Gary and I talked a little bit about this, sort of what's on the horizon, in terms of sort of land conservation and, areas of interest and concern. This is going to be a semester of us really investing in this place. And I'm looking for sort of a variety of opportunities for students to engage, in addition to being focused on Laura's landscape. So that's another piece. And the first day, actually, the class starts on the 24th, and I'm planning on just doing a tour of Williston the first day. And really, it's not until the following week that we're really going to start jumping into the landscape. So Melinda, among other things, I'd love to talk with you and just, maybe look at some maps and sort of things like that, and maybe even get the best mapping I might be able to use as a part of the class. So if that's possible, to connect with you and others in this area. So
Yeah.
Certainly, we have a lot of conversations going on around significant wildlife habitat area mapping and potential bylaw changes. And this parcel that you're talking about, that's Laura's, is right in the middle of some of the tier 1 habitat as we've mapped it right now. So it's an area of interest. And one topic that I'll throw out there is that we've been talking about how to coordinate with conservation efforts across town lines, because we often look at our town and we've got these straight lines on the edge, and then we have gray, right, unmapped territory outside. And there's definitely room for improvement in our visibility into what's taking place on the far side of town lines, and coordination with neighboring towns, so that you don't do a great job preserving this habitat block just to find out that it's becoming an island. So
thank you for that, Reed. That's exactly, I think, how we can help, partly because some of our mentors will be, for instance, in ANR's Community Connections program, like Jens Hilke and others are alumni of the program, will be helping to mentor these students. So those kinds of questions, and just learning about that, the Conservation Commission has looked at this as priority habitat in the town. We'd love to align ourselves with that and then enhance the work that you're doing in that area.
Another thing that your class might be interested in is the amount of money and resources that the town of Williston has raised over the years to support conservation and all of the conservation projects that we have kind of sponsored financially through our Environmental Reserve Fund. That goes back to the days when you were a student. Absolutely,
Carl. Williston is such a great example of that, and so I absolutely want students to be aware of what's happening at the town level with that sort of work.
I can send you a summary of that if you like.
That'd be wonderful. Yeah, any resources related to any of this that you can share with me at this point would be super useful for when I launch the class on Monday.
Yeah, I really have a ton of stuff that I can provide you on that. A lot of stuff is up on our website, but I can definitely point you to some, I think, useful resources for sure. And would love to chat with you whenever you'd like.
Well, maybe I know I'm running over time here, so I would just say perhaps as a follow-up, I'll connect with both Melinda and Gary to try to solidify some of these pieces, because this is, to me, this is tremendously exciting. I love both the opportunities and the thorniness of the issues. That's what we want to get into directly. So, and I do think there's an opportunity that will serve Williston, that the students, I think, can help move things in new directions as relates to particularly this parcel and how it fits into the community. So that's our goal and hope.
Great.
Thank you so much, Walter.
Yeah, thanks, Walt.
My
Nice to
pleasure,
see you.
and thank you all for all the amazing, you've hosted us UVM so many times in the past, and we're deeply appreciative of that.
Thank you, Walt. It was nice to see you.
Nice to see
Thanks,
you.
Paul. Good to see you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. So let's see.
Melinda, can I just mention before, I think last time I mentioned this when I brought up Walter's class, was the Boomhauer property as something that we may be acquiring conservation easements on in the future. But I have no idea whether that would be at a stage where students could maybe even just map trails or something in there, because there is a pretty big network of trails. But that would be you that would have to make that call, or maybe we contact Dan and see if it's okay with him, or
Yeah,
like that.
I think I'd probably leave that alone, just because I did ask Dan about it not too long ago, and he sort of indicated that that whole thing was on hold for the time being.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Gary, or Melinda, do you have Walter's email address?
Yes.
Okay.
It's probably just walter.pullman@uvm.edu.
What I-
Carl, he was on the email that I sent you all for the
Oh.
meeting.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Got it.
Okay. I think this probably segues nicely. I mean, I did sort of go over this to some extent, but let me just bring this up. I got a invitation to participate in the UVM NR 206 Spring 22 on pretty short notice. So I had to kind of come up with something on the fly, and briefly chatted with Matt, and he kind of threw out this idea of trying to develop a survey that would kind of get at the community's thoughts on supporting agritourism uses in the ag-rural district. And, you know, along with that, I think also polling rural landowners who do have working lands on like how we can best support them, whether it be allowing agritourism or having a transfer development rights program or something like that. So that's kind of the idea, sort of looking at this from two different perspectives. And then I talked with Laura Edling, who's running the NR 206 class this spring. And she suggested breaking this up into two different pieces, having students this semester work on developing a survey and kind of preparing some sort of distribution plan, and then having a following class work on collecting responses and analyzing and summarizing responses. So that's sort of how it stands. And there may be some opportunities to connect the field naturalist program to this in some way, but I'm certainly open to suggestions on that.
Yeah, it seems like they would perhaps have some additional questions or that would help out their work. That's a great idea. And one other quick question. Yeah.
Go
I
ahead.
just got a quick question before I get off this is, so just to clarify, Melinda, so there are town regulations on what can take place in these parcels, but I assume there's also state regulations related to current use and stuff that could happen in the parcels?
Well, so the town regulates uses, but does not regulate agricultural and silvicultural uses. So if property owners want to enroll in current use and want to have agricultural uses, including having building structures that are strictly for agricultural use, they can do all that without, sort of outside of town regulations. We don't regulate that stuff at all. What our regulations currently allow in the ARZD, those kinds of agricultural and silvicultural uses, which are exempt from local zoning, as well as outdoor recreation, residential uses, single family homes and duplexes are allowed. But really, other than, and the wedding barns, so other than that, we don't allow any other uses, including a lot of these agritourism uses. Like we don't allow campgrounds. We don't allow like indoor educational uses unless they're like accredited schools. So really, we're kind of, and all the stuff that the Ishams have done were sort of, you know, they were permitted in kind of a, I don't know how to say this. It was sort of like they were right on the edge of these agricultural uses and accessory uses to agriculture, but it was really kind of a gray area. And, you know, the outdoor theater that they did last summer, not really strictly allowed in the agri district. So, you know, I guess
They've been pushing the
kind of-
envelope.
yeah, pushing the envelope. So exploring the, you know, does the community support expanding these uses? To what extent is that supported? And what might be some of the limits around that? You know, just kind of exploring those questions.
I have a question that I wonder if it's worth like adding to that question, which is, and you can say like, that's outside the scope, or that's way too big, or that's for another class. But my like initial reaction is, or at least part of my initial reaction is, the reason for those restrictions is to protect against conversion of farmlands, right? Like to preserve the ability to retain farmlands, to retain agricultural lands, and to like make it viable for farmers to hold on to their property and to continue farming in light of like development pressures, and essentially like help reduce the scenario in which a farmer is like, I want to continue to farm this land, but I can't compete with development pressures and like the economic realities of somebody wanting to like purchase and develop my parcel, or my neighbors doing that and driving taxes up. And right, like that's the goal of having zoning that is pretty strict for agriculture, is like to create an environment in which like the economics don't get to the point where it's like cost prohibitive or completely infeasible for people to hold on to agricultural lands. And so I wonder if like in this question, there needs to be some consideration or some interviewing or some looking into whether or not expanding the allowed uses would undermine the intent of the zoning do you know what I mean? Like,
So,
if you,
yeah.
I don't know if I'm saying it correctly, but I just, go ahead.
Yeah. So the purpose, I think that the purpose of the restrictions has really been to preserve sort of a rural way of life out there, and it's more like preserving, you know, you know, like people move to a rural area, they sort of expect peace and quiet. So it's more to kind of keep incompatible uses kind of out of that area, right? And the idea of expanding the uses to include more agritourism is in my opinion, a way that to help rural landowners hold on to their properties, because it gives them more opportunity to kind of farm in a more economically sustainable way.
Possibly, yeah, possibly, but I think it's also possible that it provide, like, if you are a dairy farmer, this is not the case of anywhere that I can think of in Williston.
Mhm.
But like, I think that on a broader scale, a lot of like ag zoning restrictions are to protect against land building up and getting to a point where like the people that are farming can't afford to farm the land they already own because of things like taxes or the pressure of selling.
Oh yeah, I see what you're getting at.
And so like, if
yeah.
you are a dairy farmer and you're just trying to hold on to your dairy farm, and all around you, there are people who are doing stuff like the Ishams, and that's driving the desire to live in that area up, and that's driving tax prices up. And I'm not saying like we need that, we don't want that to happen, and so we shouldn't do that. I'm saying like, can we, in this analysis, just try to figure out like, would we be edging out? Could this lead to a scenario where we're edging out farmers? Can we at least like consider that as a question. And maybe the answer is like, no, it's not a concern, and then great. But I guess I wanted to just make sure that we consider it.
Mhm.
Yeah, I
could
think-
see, oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Jerry, you're up first.
I'm just was saying, I definitely support, the Isham's diversifying and, trying to, maintain their agricultural roots with the sugaring and the other, pumpkins and Christmas trees, but then also to, use it as a wedding barn and to have the theater seems to be a great boon. But just once, I see somewhere in there, they were talking about camping, and, I think that's kind of pushing, the envelope on the other way, where, you would have lots of traffic, you would have generators running, you would have barking dogs, for like all day long, for the whole summer. So I think it really needs to, not stretch too far from, farming.
Well, yeah. So those are the questions that we're trying to grapple
Yeah.
with. Like,
Right.
like, to what extent should uses be expanded? What kinds of uses would be acceptable? What kinds would be less acceptable to, like, just the general public, just, people living in those areas? What about people who live in more developed areas of town? How do they feel about the expansion of these uses? Just to sort of take the general pulse of the public on all of these questions, I think would be really interesting.
Yeah,
My
I
internet
agree,
keeps
Melinda.
cutting out, so maybe somebody said this and I missed it, but could farmers also, like current farmers who are not exploring expansion, also be on the interview list? Because maybe that would get at my concern. Like, are they worried that they might, like, I don't know, be suddenly competing with, a neighbor down the road? Like, we're trying to dairy farm, and the person down the road is like doing all this agritourism, and of course they can hold on to their property and deal with rising taxes, and we can't. Or, I don't know. Sorry, Eric, I think I cut you off.
That's right, Kim. Yeah, so I guess I was going to agree with what Melinda was suggesting. It's important to get perspectives from folks who are the neighbors, but also folks in town. And obviously the neighbors, the folks in town would balance the not in my backyard perspectives, but at the same time, it's obviously important to consider the opinions of people whose backyard would be impacted. I think that from my perspective, it's about maintaining the rural nature of that part of town, but we also don't want to zone them out of business either, because then we just end up with a bunch of, if they go out of business, we end up with a bunch of derelict barns, which isn't all that great either. And we're not going to, because of the zoning out there, we're not going to allow them to build development, large developments and all that. At the same time, we don't want carnival out there either. So we have to find that happy medium.
Or go ahead. Sorry.
And it's about, it's so I guess I'm not really saying anything all that different from what other folks are contributing, but with camping, we don't want an RV campground probably, or a KOA campground, but maybe a tenter platform or something, a lean-to platform that the Ishams have on their property up in the woods. I don't see that as very impactful. So I think there's the balances. We just need to find it, and perhaps this survey that in our 206, and probably I think with some help from the Field Naturalist program could help us get that information. From my water quality perspective, I see the things that the Isham farm is doing as much more beneficial to the landscape in the watershed of Lake Iroquois than dairy farming, for example. Having 100 cows on the property versus a wedding barn. I think that's a lot better for Lake Iroquois. The health of Lake Iroquois, obviously, there's more considered, but I'll throw that out there too. Thanks.
Linda, I have a question on what are some of the requests that have come in the past that have been denied because of the restrictions?
Um, let's see. Well, I think, I mean, initially, like Laura came in with a request to, I think, have a wedding barn, and I don't remember the specifics, but I believe she was denied because right now the only way you can have a wedding barn is if you have restored a historic barn, and it was determined that she, you know, in the strict terms of it, did not, it wasn't considered a historic restoration. So she didn't qualify for that. The other, we have gotten requests for, somebody wanted to have camping on his land, and, you know, had to, for now at least, deny or just say, you know, we don't think that you're gonna be able to do that because our regulations don't currently allow that. You know, trying to think what else.
I have a memory of someone who wanted to open like a pet spa on
Oh,
Governor
yeah.
Sheridan Road, and
Yeah.
they thought it was gonna qualify because it was like animal lot related, but it wasn't like livestock.
Yeah, I think that did go through the DRB, and I think it was sort of loosely categorized as like associated with veterinary services, sort of, you know, but it never ended up, I think it ended up dying like for other reasons, even though I think it did get an approval from the DRB, but it just never happened. You know, but there's also been, you know, this tension between the agritourism uses, like you have on Old Stage Road, the Adams Farm does the food truck night on Tuesday nights in the summertime, and that's been approved via special events permit. And some of what the Ishams have done has also been approved through special event permit, which, you know, also is a little bit shaky because right now we're in the process of revising the special events permit, but as it stands, it's a really, I mean, the special events ordinance, it's really pretty crappy. But anyway,
So those are
stuff,
two different zones, right?
yeah, so stuff outside of our zoning, you know, sometimes gets approved through special event permits, but we've also gotten complaints from, you know, from neighboring properties saying, like, you know, we don't think that they ought to be allowed to have this event every week because it's really disruptive to me and to our lifestyle to have, you know, a big loud event next door to us all the time. So anyway, there's different perspectives.
And then, you know, another something else to keep in mind is, you know, if Ishams are doing weddings and Handy Barn is doing weddings, and a lot of other barns are out there that, you know, it could be Oak Hill Road could turn into, you know, the wedding barn circuit as well. You know?
Yeah.
I remember when we were looking at you know, wedding venues, we went down to Warren, and it was just, you know, pulling one driveway at the next to check out the, you know, the neighboring wedding barns.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't know if that's what we want for that corridor either, but
Yeah,
that's potential.
yeah, for sure. Any rate, I guess, you know, we'll see what happens. I'm gonna think a little bit more carefully about how to integrate these two classes in this one project. Maybe it's that the Field Naturals program focuses on farmers and kind of getting their perspective, you know, whereas the other class focuses more on just the broader community. I don't know. But
Yeah, I can see that as a good model. The, you know, field naturalists are more oriented to the in-depth research and in-person interviews, I think, than perhaps the 206 students would be.
yeah,
I can see them also, you know, using the field naturalists program as a way to look at other models that have been successful in other towns, either in Vermont or across the region. They're
Mhm.
trying to figure out how to move forward in today, in the era of farms going out of business and trying to keep farms in business, but allowing them to diversify
Mhm.
up to a point and keep their land.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
All right, that was a great discussion. Thank you. Melinda, can we move on to future board and open meeting law training?
Sure. So I received a memo recently related to open meeting law, and I provided it in your packet. I don't really want to say much about this right now, except that we will probably be doing some kind of mini board training in an upcoming meeting, just to talk more in detail about open meeting law, and just make sure that you all are just, to refresh your memory about conduct as a board member and all that stuff. So just an FYI for that. And oh, one thing I also did want to mention, because it's probably going to be out there in the, possibly in the local news, et cetera, is that at the Planning Commission last night, the Glazers came to discuss a idea that they have for doing a specific plan for their property. They, they didn't provide much detail about it at this time, but they.
Who are the Glazers and where is it?
That is the large parcel on the corner of Old Stage Road and Mountain View Road.
So
It's
a horse farm.
Yeah,
place
the
there?
windswept farm.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So they are contemplating applying to do a specific plan to develop a portion of that property and preserve a portion of it as open space, working with the town to protect the view, primarily the view shed portion of that property. I don't know anything else about it. It just, they haven't submitted an application yet, but that's kind of that's their idea.
This reminds me, Melinda, so much that we often don't realize the pressures until it's too late on different properties. And on an upcoming agenda, I would love to see us pause and take a look at the conservation prioritization and our ERF funding, and where we're headed in terms of the ability to purchase development rights, the ability to purchase land, with specific regard to the did you say it was Glazer? Is that the name of the owner?
Yeah.
Excuse me. They're the ones who bought it to protect it from being, in part to protect it from being developed the last time it came up for sale, correct?
Correct, yeah.
Yeah.
That was a long time ago, so that property.
Yeah, that was a long time ago.
A long time.
Yep. Yeah, they've now owned it for a long time. Yeah, and so it's interesting that this is coming up, and I just know that that was in our top 10% or whatever, our top few parcels for conservation. So it's just a reminder of the importance to think ahead, because there's not much we can do once somebody has a plan in mind and has invested resources in going a particular direction.
Mm-hmm.
Do they live on Turtle Lane or whatever that's called?
Mm-hmm.
I think someone said that they live right there.
Yeah.
And that was the idea of I think partially why they wanted to protect it.
Mm-hmm.
And what's does anybody know what's happening with Windswept Farm? Because they're like a 5-acre parcel, but they use the land for haying and things like that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
nobody knows. It's, yeah. Okay.
No.
All right. Terry, are you giving us Catamount Community Forest updates?
Sure, sure. So,
Okay.
so I'm not sure when's the last time this was done. So I'll just quickly go through some of the things that have happened this fall. The South Fields, Goose Hill, I guess that was mowed. So that's part of a 3-year plan of mowing. Reed Parker, who is one of the newest members on the committee, he and his brother-in-law, Bill, have put up one wood duck box on the South Pond. And they're planning to put up one more there. And then on the other side, the north side, one box each of the ponds that are over there. So they determined that was the amount of boxes that would be feasible. The buck and rail fence that the Catamount Outdoor Family Center, was interested in, that's installed. So they're funneling folks to the hub in the rental spot. And let's see, the signs that were on that big barn, the shed, the rental shed, have been moved to the other side because there was, we were talked about a kiosk at one point, but Melinda moved them to the other side, which is great since everybody's getting funneled over there. And some handicap signs were placed, which a lot of people were happy about, to have that signage installed. The logging that was Ethan had planned to do in 2022 has been moved to 2023 because of the scarification that he wanted to do, and the, I guess, what are the restrictions with, I can't remember, Melinda, what that restriction is, where you can't disturb the top layer of the soil. So that's been moved to 20. Yeah, so we just have to go to 2023. And I think, if I'm right, correct me, Melinda, that the bridge repair is going to happen this year.
Possibly.
Right, in 2022, because that would be a good swap of the two things. Laura's agreed to do some more invasive workshops coming up this year, would start in October, September. And we just, our last meeting, we basically started a conversation about the sheep barn and the renovations on that. We're still waiting to have Lathrop put in a cable on the barn. And I did actually meet with Kim and Grady, who was a maintenance guy there, to look at the barn. So I just wanted to go in and look to see what state it was in. And definitely needs a cable because kind of the walls are falling out. And Pat pointed out that the report that was done by Lathrop did mention some holes in the roof. So we're looking into getting those patched temporarily till, I guess, the committee, the town decides what they want to do with the barn. Just the Catamount Outdoor Family Center indicated at the last meeting that they were not really interested in putting money into the barn to restore it for their storage needs for their equipment, that they were maybe more interested in maybe building a simple pole barn, maybe behind the barn for their equipment needs. So so that's just in the very beginning stages of discussion, but Lathrop had done a basic assessment on the barn a year ago, I guess, and described the different options about fixing the barn in place, moving the barn to a different location, so that conversation can start. One thought I had was in 2023, there's going to be some logging done on the property. So possibly we could mill out some lumber to use and repair the barn, because things like sills and siding needs to be done on the barn. So far, that's where the committee is at. So any questions?
I thought the thing that you sent around yesterday showing the signs for forest management were interesting and looked really good.
Yeah, they were great. Ethan has done that at the Heinsberg Town Forest, and it's really kind of fun. You know, you're walking through and you get to one of the signage, and you know, if you have your smartphone, you can get some more information. But yeah, I think they're very well received at different locations.
They're up now.
No, he'll put them in the spring when the ground thaws, and it's just a simple pounding of a post into the ground. So, and he has some up there now that he created that were to do about the invasive project that has been. I think the guy did come. They did the brontosaurus work this past year and cleared out a lot of that buckthorn, but then they actually went back through, I think in November, and did a spray treatment of the buckthorn that had really come back in force. And there's signage there. So yeah,
Thank you, Terry.
Yeah, sure. Things are, moving along. We're meeting once a month for an hour. So we kind of go through that. And then Catamount Outdoor Family Center, thank goodness got some snow. So they're up in, they've started a snowshoe school program. They've, what are some of the other things they've done, Melinda?
I can't remember off the top of my head.
Yeah, just the, putting up of the fence to trying to funnel people over to the hub to get them to sign in to get an idea of how many people are coming through. Yeah, so it's hopefully they're planning on camps, doing a nature camp kind of a thing this coming summer. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, I have to get back over there. I haven't been there for a while. Does anybody else have anything? We have 5 minutes left to add anything that's been going on.
Well, Laura, I have a request for you.
Sure.
And that is when we are discussing site plans and we go to recommendations, I would request that we discuss the findings first, the findings that Melinda has outlined before we get to the recommendations. That would help us focus better on the recommendations once we get there.
One other thing that came up on my radar last night, find it now. So Melinda, I assume you received this email, maybe other members did too, from Catherine Branch at the Cornwall Conservation Commission. It's through the ABCC distribution list. But
Okay, yeah.
She circulated this spreadsheet with town conservation funds data. I didn't know if you received the email, but I'm not sure how they keep this database spreadsheet really updated, and whether or not you want to update it for them.
Sure.
Looks like our information in there is a little bit out of date, pre-Catamount project in particular.
Yeah, I don't always open those emails, I have to admit. So I'll take a look at this one.
You're not alone. I'm not sure why I opened this one myself.
One thing a little bit interesting on my end is that Alicia Daniel and I are, she is the director of the Vermont Master Naturalist program. We're going to make a Williston movie this summer and talk about basically what Walter was saying for the Field Naturalist program, you know, talk about the layer cake from geology up through natural communities in Williston and, you know, glacial impacts and human settlement patterns. So that's just a fun project that's coming up.
Nice. Will this be a feature-length film or
No. No. It'll probably be 20 minutes to half an hour.
Excellent.
Yeah. So.
Theaters near you.
Or just for interested folks. So. All right. Well,
Is that with the class? Is that with the UVM kids?
No.
Okay.
No, Alicia actually puts out short videos
Oh,
of
yeah.
different natural areas around. Usually they were like 10 minutes and she's expanded a few to be a little longer. So, yeah. All right, everybody. Thank you. And unless there's something else, I will adjourn the meeting.
Sounds good. Thanks, everyone. Have a good day.
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye-bye.